So one thing I think we get asked quite often is what's the difference really between buying a house or an apartment, e.g. Buying something on a leasehold basis and buying something on a freehold basis.
Yeah.
And I think it causes quite a lot of confusion, especially when you're talking about the UK property market as opposed to maybe other regions like here in Dubai or elsewhere. What have you come across, people asking you that question?
Yeah.
I know we find it quite confusing because in our eyes it doesn't really make too much of a difference, but I think some people it does. And maybe we can just go through it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's worth sort of talking about why leasehold was introduced first of all, and what they are.
Yeah.
So obviously freehold is you own the plot of land and everything on top of it, or the airspace above it.
Yeah.
Leasehold is that you only own. You're almost like it's like you're renting that particular plot for a pre-agreed certain amount of time. So 125 years, 250 years, 1,000 years, or whatever. But there is somebody else who owns the actual plot. So they're the freeholder, and then you're renting your individual space off them for that number of years.
Yeah.
And the reason it was introduced in the UK however many years ago is purely because when you've got a block of apartments, as an example, and let's say for example, something happens to the roof, and who's responsible for maintaining that?
Yeah.
Is it because everybody benefits from a roof that doesn't leak, not just the person on the top floor? And it also, if there's a dispute between, say, there's a leak or a burst pipe, or there's something that goes wrong in between the apartment there and the apartment underneath, is it responsibility of the apartment above or the apartment underneath?
Mm-hmm.
So by having leasehold, you have a central management company that is responsible, which is obviously appointed by the freeholder, to maintain all of this, and they also, if there's any disputes, they take care of all of that as well. So essentially, it's in place to make life a bit easier for the leaseholders.
Yeah, I think if you own a house in the UK and you own the freehold, absolutely fine, go ahead. If you're an investor though, and you're not living in that house, and let's say you live abroad as well, you don't actually live in the UK. If something goes wrong, that's up to you to sort out. The whole plot belongs to you, so if something internally goes wrong in the house, that's on you to fix. It's not on anyone else because you are the freeholder.
Internally and externally.
Yeah, exactly.
Tiles get blown off the roof, or there's some subsidence and the house starts to sink.
It's all on you. Yeah.
It's all on you.
I think the only difference you'll probably find with leasehold is there is service charges.
Yeah.
Which comes across with any residential apartments really.
There's always some running costs,
form of service charges, which I don't personally find a negative because service charges are there. It's almost like a little maintenance contract, I suppose, in terms of looking after your building.
Yeah, exactly. And I know obviously you've got your ground rent as well that you pay to the freeholder every year. But again, as part of these agreements, the freeholder is responsible for making sure that the communal space is taken care of, and the actual building, etc., is all taken care of. It's not just down to you. A lot of people say, "Well, I don't actually own it." Well, you do own it.
Yeah.
You do. Yes, it's on a 250-year or 1,000-year lease. Or
but we've got a virtual freehold because no one's living the lifetime that you're given.
No,
basically.
I mean, let's face it. 250 years from now,
2 or 3 generations.
Nobody has a clue what's going to happen in this world. 1,000 years from now, I mean, if we go back 1,000 years, let's say somebody bought something 1,000 years ago with 1,000. I mean, the leasehold didn't exist then, but for argument's sake, let's say they did.
Yeah.
The likelihood of it still being in that family 1,000 years later is very. I mean, even the building still being there 1,000 years later.
Yeah, it's unrealistic.
It's unrealistic. So. It's not to say that they're not built properly, but 1,000 years is, we've never known anything be built
exactly
1,000
years.
It's things from ancient Egypt and things like that. But so it's not something I'd worry too much about. Like I said, it's virtual freehold.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's interesting about going back to the discussion of houses and apartments as well is the movement of, well, I think anyway, it's the movement of people who used to think that buying houses was good because that's what people want to live in.
Yeah. Which is the middle class dream.
Yeah.
Or the working class dream. Sorry, not middle class. Dream.
Yeah.
Working class dream is to, what is it? Sort of what they want to have their own my castle. Or something.
Yeah, like everyone wants to be in, and it might, that still might be true maybe for certain generations.
Yeah.
I think the way the world's working, I think the way the UK is sort of working now, especially in big city places, is people are moving towards wanting to be in the city centre, being close to what's going on around the shops, the
restaurants,
cafes, bars, whatever it might be.
Yeah, their workplace.
Yeah, and apartments are becoming, way more popular, especially in bigger cities, Manchester, Leeds, Birmingham, even London.
You can't get a big house in a city centre.
Yeah, exactly. It just doesn't exist.
For them. It
Yeah,
doesn't exist. So you have to live in an apartment.
And I think they are now commanding a much higher sort of better return on investment in terms of rent. I don't think houses are. I don't think it typically is quite easy to get a really high return on investment in a house unless it's.
It's like a HMO. I mean, it's not to say houses are bad investments, but I think city centre locations, there's always high demand.
Yeah, if you take like a 2-bed house in the outskirts and the suburbs of a city as opposed to a 2-bedroom apartment.
Exactly. It's a bigger decision for somebody to move into that because
they need a car, or they have to get the bus or whatever. There's a lot more.
Whereas if you're working in the city centre, and let's face it, these days people are working longer hours. And employers are expecting people to work longer hours, and people are doing it because they want to keep their job.
Yeah.
They're starting work at 8:30 in the morning, and often people are there till maybe 6:30, 7 o'clock at night.
Mm-hmm.
So then, if you then had to drive or then had to travel half an hour, 40 minutes, an hour in some cases to get home, it sort of makes your day. Start your day at leaving the house at, let's say, 7:30. You're not getting home till 8 o'clock at night.
Yeah.
For Monday to Friday, that's a bit crappy.
Yeah.
So to live in the city centre and be, maybe a 10-minute walk away from your office. Yeah. It's just better quality of life, isn't it?
I think even mentioned better quality of life. I think the way that apartment blocks are being built now anyway, as opposed to
10 years.
10 years ago, I think they're copying trends.
Yeah.
Like you find in Middle Eastern countries.
Like Dubai,
exactly. They have
facilities,
swimming pools, gyms, and things that
concierge
will attract, especially young, the young working professional tenant.
They've got gardens now, a lot of them.
Yeah.
Rooftop gardens, they've got big communal gardens. So you've got all these facilities. It just creates more of a community as well. So people make friends with their neighbours. A lot of the management companies of these buildings, they actually organise social events as well, which I think is fab.
Interesting to see what happens. Let's say 5-10 years from now. How are houses going to still sort of continue? Is there still going to be?
I mean, I think there'll always be demand for them. As somebody who's got both apartments and houses, they all rent well, to be honest. But I think that the trends are slightly different. Previously it was young couples or young professionals that would rent a house and commute to work. Now they are living in the apartments, and the people that are living in houses are families, so young families, and even older families now, because less and less people can even afford to buy property. Average age for a first-time buyer now in the UK is creeping up to 40 years old, and that's going to keep going because property prices are on the up, salaries are not quite as moving at the same rate. So less people can afford to save for a deposit to buy it.
I think it's interesting when you say that. It is more for families now, and I do agree. I think families are. You're more. You've got 2 children.
Garden maybe, or a bit more space.
I think most families as well, when they get to that time where they want to move into a house, they're not looking really to rent. I think a lot of them are looking to, at that point, buy a house, if anything. Or
I agree with you, but I think some people still can't. In some places they can't, just because just because of what you need. You think about your deposit. Maybe 10, 15, 20% as a deposit, stamp duty, moving costs, all these things. Some people just haven't got that, and some people don't want that tie as well. Even with kids, they'll move to a house, but they know that career-wise, and I know a lot of my friends in the UK, that are in their 30s and 40s, and they're still renting because they move around for work, even with their families. I've got a couple of friends in London who just this summer relocated to Manchester, and it's like mid-30s. Moving to Manchester to rent because the job's taken them there, and they might stay there for 3 or 4 years, and then they might move to Birmingham or Leicester or Nottingham or somewhere like that. So I think we are becoming a generation of renters in the UK. That's certainly my opinion of it. But I think people, they prefer less responsibility. You know, if you're renting the property and there's maintenance that needs doing, that's on the landlord.
It's like I think I mentioned to you the other day about if you look at other European countries. But I think I was discussing Germany at the time, and I think last time I was in Germany, I spoke about this with a few people. And everyone in Germany rents, and majority of them live in apartments as well.
I think it's the same in Holland.
Like
as well,
majority of people, it's very rare to actually find someone who actually owns the property they live in. It's majority of people rent. It doesn't matter what age you're at. You know, you could be a very, very wealthy individual, but you'd still choose to rent, and it's just a very common way of living in these cities. And you know, maybe the UK is set to sort of follow this trend.
I think what we're seeing, I mean, I've seen it as well. Getting back to a lot of people I know similar age to me, that they're choosing to still rent, but they understand the merits of buying property in the right locations. So what a lot of people are doing now is renting the property in the location that they want, which to buy might cost them a lot more than what it would cost them to rent it. But they're still saving up money and investing in property that generates them income that then pays their rent. Things what we're calling it rent vesting, and I think we'll see more people doing that.
Your own home is not an asset. Is basically
exactly
the quote, isn't it? Yeah.
You've got your assets that are generating you income, so you're living for free, rather than putting all your eggs into one basket and having a mortgage to pay. Let's say, for argument's sake, you were paying £2,000 a month rent, or you could pay £2,500 a month, or even £2,000 a month on a mortgage. If you put your money into, let's say, 5 properties that generated you £400 a month each, that gives you your £2,000 a month and pays your rent. Or you don't have those properties and you put all of that cash into one mortgage and you're just paying £2,000 a month mortgage. Okay, yes, it's your property eventually after 20 years and you pay the mortgage off, but you still got to find that £2,000 a month. Whereas in the first example, all your properties are paying your rent. You're living for free. So
no win, no brainer.
Smart way of doing it. It's just different. It's just different mindset. And I think a lot of people, parents like to give their advice, which is great, but the experience of people in their 50s, 60s, 80s, whatever, and 70s, I do know how to count, is very different to what it is today. It's a lot easier to buy a house 30 years ago or 20 years ago than it is today. So we've got to look at things in a different way. And I'm sure that in 20 or 30 years' time, things will also be very different to what they are today. So,
I have heard that the way our parents, for example, the way they invest into property is totally different as the way our generation, the younger generation, will have a chance to invest into property. It's completely different. It's different ways to invest now. There's different lending options. There's different everything. So,
and it's not as easy.
The way they did it would have been far different. I think properties would have cost you about £10,000 back.
Well, I think maybe 20 years or 25 years ago, it was maybe 3 times your annual salary. Now the average price of property is 6 or 7 or even 10 times your annual salary. So to actually get a mortgage for that level is, in some place, London is a prime example. A lot of people in London are never ever going to be able to afford to buy a property, with the average price is now well over £500,000 or something like that. It's a heck of a lot of money as a first time. You've got to put down maybe the best part of £100,000 for a deposit. You've got your stamp duty. Yes, we've got the stamp duty on it right now, but that's not going to last forever. You've got to furnish it, and then you've got to still pay your mortgage on it when it's there. So more people are probably, in my opinion, going to carry on renting there. But if they save up money, you can buy, flats and houses elsewhere in the UK, northeast, northwest. Some of the other cities where it's a lot cheaper and you can get more bang for your buck.
Yeah, cool.
That's my thoughts on it.
Sweet.